Good afternoon. We're here to provide you with an important public health update regarding the last few weeks and just basic updates on where we're at with respect to number of cases, vaccination rates, and our measures in schools. So presently, we'll look at number of cases first to start off with. So we presently have 15 active cases in the community, and we'll just pull up the chart if it's ready. So we presently have 15 active cases in the community. Fourth wave, we've had a total of 111 total cases. So remember, we have a significant amount of cases in this fourth wave. All the cases that have been sequenced by the labs are at confirm that we have the Delta variant here in the community. So all of the cases that we have sequenced, which is not all of them because the lab only sequences a portion, of those that are positive, we've had 9% that are unvaccinated and 99%. Sorry, I'm really messed up today. So I'm going to start over. Of the total amount of cases that are vaccinated with 2 doses, there are 10 people, which represents 9% of the total amount of cases, versus unprotected 99 people, which represents 91% of unvaccinated. So important to measure as well with respect to these numbers is that from the 0 to 9 age group, there are 39 positive cases, and the 10 to 19 age group, 29 positive cases. So this is really important. It's following the trend in the rest of Quebec. It's really where we're seeing the most amount of new cases. Of course, these are school-aged children who don't have the ability to be vaccinated, and that's why we're seeing so many cases in the schools at the present time. And we'll talk a little bit later about how we can try to decrease those numbers and keep our kids in school. So first, I just want to give you an update on vaccination rates. So we'll go to the next chart. And so in this chart, we broke it down by age category. So the 12 to 15-year-olds, first and second doses are both at 70%. The positive thing here is that everybody who had their first dose has also had their second dose. We still want to increase those numbers if we can, and we are still available for vaccination appointments. We continue to book appointments, approximately 30 to 60 people per week. If we look at the 16 and 17-year-olds, which is the just in the middle of the charts here, first dose is at 90% and second dose is at 78%. So what's important to note here is that this age group is the highest vaccinated age group. So this has been the case since the beginning. However, for second doses, we still are not at the same amount as the first dose. So we want to get that number up a little bit to the same rate as first doses. Just a reminder that with the Delta variant, it requires 2 doses to be fully protected. So really important if you've had your first dose to call us for your second dose. For the 18 plus category, first doses are at 80%, second doses at 70%. And again, we have a 10% discrepancy between first and second doses, so we really urge you to call for your second dose if you haven't had it already. So our overall vaccination rates for 2 doses are still at 70%. So we continue to inch up a little bit every day or every week. However, we still could benefit in the community from increased safety by increasing our vaccination rates. Thanks for that. That's the update regarding vaccines. So I want to go now to the schools. We released a press release yesterday advising the community that there has been outbreaks in the schools, in particular in the younger age groups, and those age groups don't wear masks in the schools. So we wanted to talk a little bit about today about what the plan could be and how, as a community, we all can work together to be able to ensure the safety of the kids and keep the kids in school. So it really is, there are many variables that come into play to ensure safety in the schools. The first, I'll talk about busing, and we will have a press release that will come out a little bit later today or early tomorrow regarding busing. The first change that we'd like to make in how, we've observed what has happened over the last few weeks since school has started, and that's why we're able to make these recommendations. So the first is that we would make a requirement for students to wear medical grade masks on the buses. So we know that some kids are coming onto buses with a cloth mask. For the time being, bus drivers or monitors will ask your child to change their mask, and they'll provide a mask. However, they won't be able to do that forever, so we ask that parents also procure some medical grade masks, which is like a 3-ply mask that you can get in the pharmacy. Also, the bus drivers are in the process, or the organizers are in the process of organizing assigned seating so that your child will always sit in the same spot. Why is this important? It's because it allows us, if we do have a positive case on the bus, it allows us to isolate a smaller number of families, so only the kids that sit in the vicinity of the child who was positive, as opposed to the whole bus. This makes a huge difference for those families who have been in isolation over the course of the last couple of weeks. It's really, really difficult. So the less people we put in isolation, the better. Of course, the bus drivers have plexiglass between them and your children, and there are many measures that are being followed regarding hygiene, masking, cleaning. All of that is being done regularly on the buses, so that's a really good step. So that's a first part of keeping our kids in school. The second part of keeping our kids in school is, of course, the schools. So I'm just going to go over some of the measures that they have in place, but I know Robin has spoken about that and will continue to speak about that and give you updates. But here are just a few things. So there are public health measures in all of the schools regarding masking, regarding hygiene measures, regarding cleaning practices, regarding environmental adaptations. There are also monitors that work with the teachers, with the students, with the school to ensure that these measures are being followed on a regular basis. There also is screening of unvaccinated teachers. And there is remote learning that happens when classrooms need to close. And further procedures will be coming to you shortly from the school to all the families regarding procedures for remote learning. Also, masking is very important. Masks are provided for children to change their mask throughout the day. So they receive 2 masks per day. What's important and what we see moving forward is that many of the younger children, nursery and kindergarten, although it's not obligatory that they wear masks throughout the day, it is recommended. So if your child is able to wear a mask, then we recommend that they do, even at that young age. And we do see a difference right now at the younger age groups without the masks regarding transmission within the classroom versus the older classes where they were wearing masks, and the transmission has been much, much less when there is a positive case in the classroom. The next element that is required to ensure safety within the schools is, of course, our local public health team. So we work very, very closely with the schools to work with identification of cases, work with our testing site, work with ensure that we do contact tracing within 24 to 48 hours, and ensure that we follow up with cases. There are some changes we're making in that respect as well as of today. Over the last couple of weeks, the schools were sending documents, contacts of cases were receiving documents from the schools with instructions about how you should react regarding isolation, regarding testing, etc. However, you were not necessarily receiving a phone call from our public health team. We see that that is probably not the best way to proceed. So we're going to make changes to that, and any new cases, the classrooms will receive a telephone call from local public health, just so that you can ask your questions and you can be more reassured about the process that you have to put in place in your families. However, it's important to keep in mind that our resources are limited, so there could be times throughout the school year where you will receive calls later than 24 hours after the case has been identified. So sometimes you might see it being identified or hear of it before we have had a chance to call you. However, we will, our goal is to contact trace within 24 to 48 hours. The next important part, and the most important part of this whole process of keeping kids in school, are you, the families of our children that are in school. So what are your responsibilities to ensure safe schooling this year? The first is that you work with your children so that they are comfortable wearing their mask, how they wear it, that they keep it above their nose. That's a really important part. The next part is that you perform your daily symptom health check with your children. It might seem like this is not something important, but it really reduces the presence of kids with symptoms in schools. So you doing your symptom health check with your kids every day, and when you do identify a COVID-related symptom, that you keep them home from school. This has never been more important than this year because we have many more kids in school, and we know that children have very few symptoms with COVID. So they might have a headache and a runny nose. It might last an hour or two the night before bed. However, those are COVID-related symptoms, and they do warrant staying home and being tested. There are some new rules that are coming up in the school as we speak, and that is that if your child does not come to school, you will be contacted to find out if their symptoms were COVID related, and a negative COVID test will be required before they can come back to school. Same thing if your child is put into isolation at school because of COVID related symptoms and you're asked to pick them up, then also you will be asked to have your child tested and have a negative test before they return to school. These are important changes that we're making in order to decrease outbreaks and in order to decrease transmission when there are positive cases. Of course, hygiene measures are really important. How we sneezing into our arm, always throwing out our Kleenex, all of those things, working with our kids so that they understand the importance of these measures will really help to keep kids in school and also decrease the amount of families that need to be in isolation. So at the present time, we have, I believe, close to seven classrooms that are closed, which represents a huge amount of families that are impacted. We know that our kids need to stay in school, but the more that we can decrease the transmission of the virus, the less people that we have in isolation, therefore the less people in the community that are impacted. There's one thing, the next and final piece to ensure that our kids stay in school is our community's responsibility. So we've talked about families, we've talked about busing, we've talked about the local public health team, we've talked about the schools. The next is the community at large. So the more the virus is circulating within the community at large, the more our children will be impacted. It's just normal because they're unvaccinated. So this is the more we decrease cases in the community at large, the better it is for our children to remain in school. So that means that checking for symptoms every day is important for all of us. And remember, even if you're vaccinated, if you develop COVID-related symptoms, then you should stay home and you should be tested. And those symptoms may be minimal, but important, and they may last for a short amount of time, but still testing is warranted. So we want to keep transmission low. We want to identify when we're sick so that we can get tested as quickly as possible. Those are the hallmarks in ensuring that we keep transmission low. We want to follow the public health measures. This is really important when public health asks you to be tested and to self-isolate, that you do so, because that is what is going to protect the kids and ensure that the kids can stay in school, and in fact it benefits the community as a whole. we know that there's been some difficulty in having access to the testing site, so we're making some changes there. We'll be announcing them shortly. However, we are increasing our hours, and there are some things that are in the works that we'll talk about regarding rapid testing. So rapid testing will soon be implemented in the schools, both for teachers who may be unvaccinated and require screening, but also to have a more quick response time in the classrooms when there is an identification of COVID-related symptoms of one of the kids. But we will provide you with further information on that in the coming week or so. So the last thing that I wanted to cover is just to give families a better explanation of what to expect when we do identify a positive case in a classroom. And we do expect this to happen on a regular basis throughout the coming year. Again, because children are not vaccinated, and because we do have a high percentage of Delta variant, which transmits much more quickly than we ever saw happen in the previous 3 waves. So the first thing that we do when we get a positive case is we contact your school, and the school gives us all the information, gives public health all the information that we require in order to start our investigation. So we get a good understanding of how the classrooms are organized, do the classrooms mix or not mix with other classes, how many children are in the classroom, how many teachers were in and out of the classroom, were there specialists, were there not. All of this information is provided to us. And then with that, we also contact the positive cases to have a better understanding of the parents' view of the child's actions during their contagious period. So whether there were contacts outside of school, whether there were other scenarios that might be important in the investigation. This investigation that we do with families and with the school is super important. The information we get allows us to make an informed decision about how we react. We can state that in the elementary ages, as soon as there's a positive case in the classroom, we will consider it a moderate risk and therefore close the classroom. Why do we do this? It's really preventative. In the schools outside of Kahnawà, they are not closing classrooms, or they are very rarely closing classrooms. However, we see that the transmission is so major and so quick within the community, and it impacts so many other people, that for us in the community, we feel that it's beneficial to close the classroom. However, that investigation gives us a lot of information about other people to contact and how we might react as well with other contacts. So what will happen after we've spoken with you is the classroom will receive a document like this from the school, and that's a public health document which explains all the measures that you're to follow at home. I'm going to go over this document because it's really important. So you're going to get it from, you should be getting it through Class Dojo, and in this we give directives for testing. So when we call you to tell you that you're a contact of a positive case, you will be asked to get tested immediately, for your child to be tested, and they will also be asked to be tested on day 9 of their isolation. One change that has happened over the course of the last week is that isolation now, when you're a contact of a positive case, is 10 days instead of 14. So that's something that's positive. The reason why this has changed is because we're seeing with the Delta variant more and more that if somebody is going to become positive, they become positive more quickly after exposure. So, and that's why the isolation is for 10 days instead of 14. So you'll be asked to be tested on day 1 and on day 9. We test again on day 9 before you return to school to ensure that your child hasn't developed COVID but without symptoms. So this is a way of stopping asymptomatic spread. So day 1 and day 9. However, if your child develops symptoms in between that period, then we ask that you call the testing site to be tested. There's also information in this document about how the rest of your family should act when your child has been sent home as a contact of a positive case, meaning if you're vaccinated versus if you're not vaccinated, how you would respond is a little bit different. So all of that information is found in this document. I won't review it today, but you have access to it and you'll receive it every time your child is identified as a contact of a positive case. There are some children who, or there are some families who refuse to have their children tested when they're contacts of positive cases. Of course, that is your prerogative. However, it's really, the testing allows us to get a better picture of what's happening in the classroom. So I just want to explain the reason why we test all the kids in the class. We may find a positive case. However, that might not be the index case. That might not be the case that actually transmitted the virus within the classroom. So as you know, we do have outbreaks in a couple of classrooms at the present moment. However, we're still trying to piece together all the parts of the puzzle to be able to identify where that original case came from. It's not because we want to know who started the virus, it's because who started transmitting the virus. It's because it gives us information about where there may be further transmission cases outside of that classroom. And that's really important for siblings or for other classes if we want to make sure to really control and contain. So if we test all of the kids and many others come back positive, then it gives us a lot more information in order to solve our puzzle. And contact tracing is all about putting pieces of a puzzle together. So the more information we have, the better we're able to create that picture. So if somebody is a contact of a positive case and they refuse testing on day 1 and on day 9, then it's important for you to know that that means that your isolation will be extended an extra 10 days, because we have to assume that your child has become positive during that isolation period, and therefore the 10 days is how long they would be in isolation if they become positive. So there's an extra 10 days at the end of the isolation period for a total of 20 days. So that's also explained in the document that you'll be receiving at home. So I think that's about the information that I wanted to provide today. It's a lot of information. So really the part about school safety and all of our responsibilities we're going to be releasing in a graphic in the next couple of days. The Ed Center is also in the process of creating a video that will give you more information about the document that you receive every time your child is deemed a contact of a positive case. So I think that will make things a little bit easier for people as well. We're really working hard in collaboration with the Ed Center, all the teachers, the principals. Everyone's working really, really hard to ensure that your children and all the staff are safe and that the children can stay in school and learn this year, despite the setbacks or the back and forth with the remote learning. The schools have done an excellent job of ensuring online learning, remote learning, and so this is just being finalized as we speak, but the ability to do that so easily really will make lives easier for children to be able to keep learning during those times where they have to be isolated at home. But again, the impact to families is huge. Being asked to stay home for 10 days or for someone to be home with your child, we know is really difficult. But it is going to be the reality of the coming year. So we hope that we'll get through this 4th wave quickly so that we can get on with things, but we're trying to put as many measures in place as possible to ensure safety all around. So we thank you for all of you for taking on your responsibilities to really to ensure the safety of the community as a whole. Thank you.